So my worst fears from the age of 7 of I will never let this happen to me happened.
Okay, let's take it from the top.
Welcome to Places She Shapes. Today's guest is Amanda Salt, whose career has spanned many fields, from sports coaching and health and fitness, all the way to commercial furniture, design and manufacturing. Over the years, Amanda has faced numerous challenges, from injuries to personal revelation. Through resilience, reflection and a deep understanding of her own journey, Amanda is now thriving and has become a role model to many. Amanda, hi. Welcome to Places She Shapes at Abbey Road Studios. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Can you give me a little bit of an overview of Amanda as a child?
Oh my God. You probably should have asked my mum this one. Oh man. I was very outdoorsy. In fact, I was a tomboy. I was the epitome of a tomboy. I was always up a tree or in a tent, basically, or drawing. Yes, one of those three things. That's where I could be found, drawing in my bedroom, in a tree, or in a tent. And running around all over the place, playing football. Very just crazy, energetic, outdoorsy tomboy, but very determined. So when I was 4, I was at play school, and we lived in Manchester. I was in the Manchester Evening News because we had a reporter that came round to the school, the play school, and he asked us, what we wanted to be, and I wanted to be a scout, not a guide, not a brownie. I wanted to be a scout, and then I complained that it was outrageous that girls weren't allowed to be scouts, and so I got this big thing in the Manchester Evening News at the age of 4. So I've always been very determined.
And as a teenager?
It's the same. Less trees, but still intense and quite outspoken. Yeah, but not from a I want to be outspoken. It was always, my outspokenness has always come from a position of things being unfair. So that's when I become outspoken. So unfairness is my Achilles.
Can you give me an example of something perhaps as a child or a teenager that you felt was unfair?
Girls not being allowed to join scouts. Then also at school it was that girls had to do needlework and home economics. And I wanted to do woodwork. So we petitioned the headmaster and we got to do woodwork.
Amazing.
Yes. So it's always throughout my life, it's always been unfairness. In the workplace, in friendship groups, in society. Yeah, it drives me mad.
So what did you want to do after school?
So I had to go to university. My parents were adamant about that. And I wanted to join the army. And I was all set up sort of post-university to go to Sandhurst to be an officer in the Royal Artillery. But I had a very bad sports injury that prevented me from going because I was medically unfit at the age of 21, which was, it was a shock at the time. So I kind of had to rethink everything, which was interesting because I the way I am, I have to do something I'm passionate about. I can't just do a job ever. So I have to be passionate about it. And I had two other passions, art and sport. And I couldn't go into art because I hadn't been allowed to do an art A-level. So that was gone.
Why weren't you allowed to do an art A-level?
My parents didn't want me to do it. They wanted me to go into a proper career. I don't know how they'd feel about that now, being in furniture. So they wanted me to go into a proper career, and art didn't feature in that really. So I was steered away from that. And then, of course, I was going in the army. So,
what did they consider to be a proper career?
Law, the army, that sort of thing. Yeah.
So what did you do at university?
So I did sports science, and then I did a postgrad in marketing because I felt that sports science wasn't really a proper degree. So then I did marketing postgrad, which was probably the most significant thing I've ever done in my life, because I actually ended up being quite good at it very easily. So I sort of inadvertently discovered something just to try and make myself a bit more marketable.
Mm. You mentioned to me a pivotal moment in your life when your school teacher really listened to you. Can you just tell me about that?
So that was Mrs. Weeks, and she was well, she probably still is. I don't know. I would imagine she's still alive. She was my geography teacher and form teacher, and I was going through a really rough patch when I was about 12, 13, probably when all my hormones kicked in, and I had a lot of energy. And there was a time when I was definitely potentially going off the rails. And she just pulled me aside and sort of talked to me and listened to me. And listened to me in a way that I don't think anybody ever had actually prior to that, other than my grandparents. And she sort of steered me back onto a good path. And, you know, I still think back and think, my God, how different life could have been had she not done that. I mean, I dread to think.
You had something that happened to you early in your childhood with your father that seemed to have a big effect as well.
Yeah, so he went bankrupt when I was 7, and obviously at the age of 7 you don't really know what's going on, but all I remember is our electricity being cut off, and then the car allegedly being stolen. Of course it wasn't stolen, it was repossessed. And then coming home from school one day and seeing a for sale sign in the garden and going, what's that about? And the house had been repossessed, so we had to leave it. Then my dog got put down because we couldn't take my dog with me. I didn't know that my dog was put down until about 10 years ago, because I'd been told it had gone to a farm. And I was watching Friends and they were talking about when the dog went to a farm. And I was like, but my dog went to a farm. And then I was like, oh my God, it didn't go to a farm. So I asked my mum,
it's not funny at all. It's
no,
terrible.
it didn't go to a farm. It's like, no.
Oh.
So yeah, so that was. Then we went to live with my grandparents for a while, and until my parents could scramble the money together to go and rent another house. And I can remember thinking when that happened, because it was just huge instability and chaos, and not really understanding what it was all about, and it not being explained to me what it was about, and just thinking I will never let myself go through that level of instability again, in terms of losing a house or losing finances to that extent where you just have nothing, because we literally had nothing.
Can you remember thinking that at 7?
Yeah. And I think that's stayed with me. So it's helped me a lot, because I've made some very wise financial decisions as a result of it. But I also think it stopped me doing things that deep down I should have done, because I had this inner voice telling me about, that's too risky, your financial security is too much at risk, and so you mustn't do that. And I do regret that now.
So you don't like financial risk, but you're open to other kinds of risk?
Well, this is the irony, I have taken financial risk, but I've only taken financial risk when I've known there's a cushion. Yeah. So I would never put everything on the line, ever.
So that conversation with Mrs. Weeks, was that, how long after that moment was that?
Oh God, that was probably about, I don't know, 4, 5 years after that. So my parents got divorced when I was 9, and then we had another significant change. So we were living in Manchester, and we moved to deep, darkest rural Shropshire, which was culturally incredibly different. I mean, it was night and day, because this was the late 70s, and went to a tiny little town, sort of like a big village with hardly anybody in it. And I'd been living in Manchester, and had a very different life. And I'd gone from a sort of city school to a very rural primary school. So it was a big, big change.
There was a moment where you had a random coffee conversation with someone that's led you to where you
Recently,
are today.
yeah. I mean, and this is just about life, and you just never know what's around the corner. And I'd had my own business. I sold out of it, and I swore I'd never work for anyone else ever in my life again. And for most of my working life, I haven't worked for other people. I've worked for myself. So it's a big shock to actually be working for someone else. And we went for coffee. And, I'd known Mark for years, not well, but known of him because obviously he's been very successful, and always respected him. And we just had a really lovely coffee, and he just started talking to me about, what I wanted to do. And I'd actually just started up a new business again and won a few little projects. So I had no intention of ever not really doing that. And then he said, just have a conversation with a couple more people, just speak to these people. And the more people I spoke to, I just thought, oh my God, you're amazing people. And I really like you. And it's important for me to be working with people I respect and I like, because if I don't, I cannot work with them. And I can't stay quiet, and I can't just put up with it. So I have to fundamentally like them and respect them. And I met more people, and they were just talking more and more and more. And I started to get excited because I loved what they were saying. And then no job had ever been mentioned. And it was about 4 conversations down, and still a job hadn't been mentioned. And then eventually I was like, okay, I think a job might come along. And I just thought, opportunities like this, they just don't come around very often. And especially this sort of came out of the blue at a stage in my life where I'd already made a massive change that lots of people would say, you're crazy for doing this. And I've never liked to make my life easy for myself. So to have this opportunity just suddenly before me was quite extraordinary. And I just thought, right, this is a pivotal moment now. I can stay doing my own little business again, and it may grow, it may not grow, who knows? Or I can take this risk and go and work for someone else, which I haven't done for a very long time, and see where it goes. And it just felt right.
So what was the massive change that you talked about?
When I left my own business.
Why did you do that?
I think there were several reasons. And I think one of them, if I'm really honest, was I was just bored. And boredom is kryptonite to me. And I'm not one of these people that I can just think, you're earning a decent salary, you know the job inside out, you can do it standing on your head. You just carry on, because I could have just carried on, but I'm not the type of person that can just carry on, because I get so bored and I don't find it interesting or challenging. And unfortunately, because of the way my brain's wired, I need excitement and a challenge and something to strive for. I need a goal. And maintenance or keeping something as it isn't sufficient goal for me to stay motivated or interested. And so I think the truth is I just became bored. I'd also burnt out a couple of years prior, well, 1 year prior actually, and I think that was very significant in it as well. And I didn't realise at the time that it was burnout. I just got very, very sick with vertigo. And looking back now and all sort of things that I've read and people I've spoken to, it's typical burnout. But I just didn't realise it was happening, as you never do with burnout. And then all of a sudden you're just gone.
Yeah.
So that was significant. And at the same time, we then had COVID. So it was a perfect storm. It was horrific. So I'd had burnout. Recovered from that, we went into COVID. I'm a very outdoorsy person that needs to be out.
Still a tomboy at heart?
Still very much a tomboy at heart. Have to be outside, have to be doing things. My brain doesn't sit still. It's just constantly moving at a enormous pace. And so if I don't have something to stimulate it is constantly searching for stimulation and it never stops. So if I don't have something to stimulate it, like excitement or a goal or drive, aiming for something, or physical activity to exhaust myself, it just goes wild. And so, of course, there was COVID. So stuck in a house, couldn't do all of the things that I now know were natural coping strategies that I'd had all my life that I didn't realise I had to sort of stop my brain. And they'd all gone.
So it was a fairly recent realisation that that's how your brain was sort of set up and that you needed that. Until it was taken away from you, you didn't really recognise it.
Well, I still didn't recognise it at the time. I had no idea. I just knew that I was feeling like a caged lion and I had to change something because I didn't know what was going on. And I just assumed it was being bored at work, not enjoying it anymore, not finding it exciting. But I do think it was just a combination of factors that all hit, and menopause, that hit at the same time. So there was menopause, COVID, burnout. It was horrendous. So what do you do then to stimulate yourself? You throw your life upside down.
Yeah.
So I left my business.
Yeah. How long had that business been going?
Well, I'd been working with my then business partner for 17 years.
Wow.
So significant. I mean, there'd been up and down. So it wasn't just one business. It started with one business and then it changed into another.
Yeah.
But we'd worked together for 17 years.
So how did the business start and what were the...
It started as a company called Crib 5 and we were part of the Momentum Group. And I left the furniture practice to go and start up Crib 5. And that was a decision based on this security that had happened from my younger days.
Starting up a business is not traditionally seen as financially safe.
So welcome to the mad world of my head.
Okay.
But it was within a group.
Okay.
So there was the safety of the group. So it felt safe. And there was a lot of people around me which felt less risky than the alternative. And then the irony is, a few years later, the group went bust and we had to liquidate Crib 5. So my worst fears from the age of 7 of I will never let this happen to me happened. And it's like, whoa. It was a shocker. It was an absolute shocker. And so then Ken, who I'd worked with at the furniture practice, sort of came to my rescue, being a decent guy that he is. And he just said, look, I'll back you if you want to go into business again. So I did. And that was the start of Salt and Pegram.
And what did that business do? How long did that go for?
So it was another furniture dealership. So, you know, exactly the same as Crib 5 was. And there was just Dom and I. And then we carried on for years and we were, you know, successful. And it was great. And then, of course, you know, I had my burnout and then there was COVID. And then I was just like, I need to do something different. Because, again, I don't like to make life easy for myself.
So you've had many mentors throughout your life. How do you think the people you've met at different stages of your career have shaped your path?
I don't know who's shaped it. There's people that have created opportunities for me, or like Mrs. Weeks, keeping me on the straight and narrow, probably stopping me being in prison now or something. And then there's various other teachers that helped me along the way. You know, there was people at school that sort of, I think they saw my energy and I think they probably thought that the army was a good way to keep me on the straight and narrow again. Yeah. And, you know, be very outdoorsy and all of those types of things. So I think various people have helped shaped me. I think anybody's ever said to me, oh, we think you should do this or that, because I'd probably have done the opposite. Mm-hmm. So I think the people have guided me, knowing that I can be a bit contrary.
You've got friends who've got their own businesses. What have you learnt from them?
So what's great about seeing my friends, and I've got my friends that have got very successful businesses, and what's really lovely about that is seeing incredibly successful people go through the highs and lows that you go through running a business, because the highs are huge and the lows are terrible. And knowing that everybody goes through that, because, you know, you see on social media and in the news, and you see other people within your industry, and it all looks great, and people seem to be earning lots of money and, you know, doing fabulous things and loving life. And you know what it's like when you own a business. Yes, that is part of it, but there's also a significant part that isn't that. And I think to sort of have friends that have gone through similar things, or you see them going through things that you've been through, it just makes it all real. And it helps you to realise that it is a moment in time, and it is not forever, and it will change, and it will pass, and it will be different. And that's very reassuring, because we all go through different highs and lows at different times. And boy, I've been through some lows. And just to know that it will end and it will get better, because it usually does.
So from having your own business to now leading the team, how have you found that transition?
It's strange, because I do think about it quite a lot. I do miss having my own business, but I also love being part of the team that I'm in, because they're a bunch of people that are just quite extraordinary. And they're all very, very young, so that's what's great, because it keeps me young. I learn things that I would never have a clue about, primarily TikTok. I still don't know anything about TikTok. But they're just this amazing bunch of youngsters. And again, you know, I listen to my friends who have businesses and other people that are working in industry, and they talk about the youngsters in work and their attitude and how they are and how precious and things like that. And I'm just there going, our team's not like that. Our team are like really hardcore, dedicated, determined, really hard-working. The opposite of everything you hear about sort of millennials and everything negative that you hear these days. They're not that. They're just incredible, hard-working people. And it's amazing to be around them. I love it.
How do you think you've helped create that culture? Where does that come from?
Well, I don't know if I have helped create that culture. I think a lot of that culture was there before I got there. And I think a lot of that is to do with JJ and Mark and how they see people. And they genuinely do see everybody in that company as part of their family and really genuinely care. And that was a surprise. No disrespect. I didn't expect them to be quite like that. I don't think I've ever been anywhere where people genuinely care so much about the people they work with.
Yeah.
So you just feel it and you become part of that. And I think being in that environment really helps me. And that's something I never actually realised before, that being in such a sort of inclusive, nurturing, caring environment can be so significant. And so it's just a joy to go into work every day. And I know that sounds cliche, and I know it sounds like it can't actually be true, but it genuinely is. And from coming from a position where I didn't enjoy going to work in my own business, that's quite significant.
Yeah.
And, you know, part of it might be that I don't have the stress of my own business. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know, it's a combination of factors, isn't it?
Was that a not easy, because I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision to make, or how difficult was
Leaving.
it? Yeah, and how did you make that decision?
It was really hard. And, you know, for a few years afterwards, because I left in 2020, so it was right in the middle of COVID, I did think, did I do the right thing? And I really did question why I did it, because I don't think I quite understood why I did it. And it was a really hard decision, but I think the decision came out of me just needing something to change dramatically, because I couldn't maintain where I was.
Yeah, yeah. So the collapse of Crib 5 and your injury, you've had some you've had some challenges along the way. How do you bounce back?
I have bounced back, but I'm not sure it was a bounce. It might have been a slow crawl, eventually going into a walk, and then a slight spring in my step.
Yeah.
It's taken time. It's definitely taken time. I mean, some things were quicker than others. You know, COVID and leaving my business, I didn't bounce back. I had 2 years of utter hell, which was really, really difficult. And fortunately, because of my being terrified of losing my house and a lack of financial security, I'd built up a position where I could kind of spend 2 years just doing a lot of hiking. I mean, I did do some work as well, but not a great deal. And I spent a lot of time hiking just to recalibrate, and spent a lot of time in a tent, not up trees, but definitely a lot of time in a tent in the mountains on my own with my dog. And that just, I don't know, recalibrated me. I don't know if I had a bit of PTSD post-COVID and leaving my business. I mean, it was a bit of a crazy time. And really, in those crazy times, what I should have done is just sat in it and gone, don't make any drastic decisions. But I can't do that because I like to make things difficult for myself.
Why do you like to make things? You've said that a few times. You like to make things difficult for yourself. Why do you think you do that?
Because I think I get bored.
Okay, so that comes back to the boredom piece.
So I think I have lived in search of dopamine, and however my brain can find it, it finds it. So when something becomes very simple, so, you know, like my business, we're in a lovely position. It was all ticking over nicely. We could have stayed like that until I was 65 and it would have been fine. But it's not exciting to me because there's no dopamine hit.
Yeah.
So I'm bored.
So you've said to me that you don't see situations as failures, but you see them as choices. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, when I left my business, you know, I spent 2 years figuring out what I was going to do, trying different things, which I didn't enjoy. So you could see that as a failure, and I don't, because I just see it. I made a choice. I made a choice based on those reasons, which were all valid reasons. And I made those choices. So I'm therefore responsible for those. And so now I'm going to make the best of the next situation. And so I think if you look at things as failure, it's very negative. And everybody has time in their life when things don't go well for their own reasons, for other reasons, for reasons we can't control. And if you see that as failure, that's just so negative and detrimental to recovering. So I think I've just positioned see things as challenge. And also from my dad going bust at the age of 7, I got used to my life changing dramatically very, very quickly, and then having to just get on with it. When Crib 5 went bust, Ken gave us an opportunity and we took it, and then we just ran with it. It didn't even enter my head that was failure. It was, this happened, move on. Painful, and I lost a lot of money, but you just have to get on with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, my dad didn't have that attitude. And I think that was also part of it subconsciously. But my mum is a very determined woman. And so was my grandmother. So I'm from a family of very, very strong, feisty, driven women.
I think most of them are coming on this podcast, actually. There's a theme. After your unexpected hysterectomy at 43, how did that shift your priorities and your views on things in general?
Well, again, you know, it was a very sudden shock because it wasn't expected. So, one day your life is X, and then the next day your life isn't, and you have to prepare for that. And I'd always imagined that I would have children. You could argue that 43 was pretty late for having children, but I'd always expected that I would. It never occurred to me that I wouldn't. And then to suddenly go, oh my God, that has finally gone. I mean, being 43 and not having children, I can only obviously speak from my point of view, but being 43, not having children, there's still a glimmer of hope that it's possible. But then, when you have a hysterectomy, that's gone. Mm. So that was a big old thing to get my head round. And so now, I have various friends that talk about freezing their eggs and things like that when they're younger. And I'm just like, do it. You just don't know what's around the corner. And I never did that. Had I done that, I could still have had children. Mm. So, yeah, you just have to seize that moment. And if you've got a slight thing going on in your head and a deep feeling that you should be doing something, my thing is always encourage it, always, because you genuinely don't know what's around the corner. I never knew Crib 5 was going to go bust because we were part of a group and it was the other elements.
Yeah, felt like it was secure.
You just don't know.
Yeah. Do you think you'd left that decision about children late because of career issues or career, what you were doing with your career?
There was a number of factors. I was very career driven. And it's never a good time. And don't forget, this is years ago, so it was slightly different. As a woman then, and it probably still is, choosing to have a gap in your career to have children is very significant. And I didn't want to do that. I was on a good trajectory. It was going really, really well. I had a good momentum going in my career. And so I just kept putting it off. And also the life that I've led, it's been full of a lot of fun and excitement. And I've always felt quite young and youthful. And I wasn't, it sounds crazy, but I wasn't aware of my biological clock ticking because I just felt really, really young. I still feel really, really young.
You are really young.
I'll always be forever immature.
Yeah.
And I just didn't think I was getting that old. And then all of a sudden you turn around and you've got to have a hysterectomy and you are that old. It's like, how did this happen? That was never in the plan.
So if you could go back and tell your younger self something, not necessarily about this, but just generally, what would it be and why?
Be aware of time ticking by and consider your choices better. Taking it into all different aspects of your life and not put things off. Definitely don't put things off that you have a finite time against. And, when I was a kid, nobody talks about you not being fertile. I was brought up, almost if you walk near a boy, you could get pregnant. That's how you're brought up.
Yeah.
You think you can just get pregnant.
Yeah.
So just don't put things off that there is a finite clock against.
So you don't see yourself as a mentor, but you've helped others grow. Can you just talk to me about how you identify talent in others and help them maximise their potential?
I think one of the things that has helped my career is I have been able to spot talented people. And that's been throughout all the variations of my career. I can spot talent. And so and I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's talent or a mindset that, one could argue it's both of those things. But when I see it and I see and feel ambition, I just find it really exciting. It gets the dopamine going.
Yeah.
And it's challenging and it's interesting. And I've never been bothered about money. So I've achieved money because I've been driven, but money has never been a motivating factor in my life, ever.
Yeah.
Success and being the best that you can be because it makes you happy has been the motivators. And so when I see young people, and maybe this is why I'm enjoying it so much now, is I'm surrounded by very, very young people. I am older than many of their parents, which is a shocker. And so when I'm surrounded by them and I see them interested and hungry and excited and wanting to learn, it fills me with joy.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it's probably the most satisfied I've ever been in my career, because I can see people learning and changing and starting to think differently.
And how are you nurturing those people? What are you doing or
Oh
not
my
doing?
God, I don't really know. You could interview them and they say, she's not nurturing us at all. I've no idea. It's a feeling that I have, and their interest, they become more interested. And then you can, you suggest things to them and then you see them take it on board, and they take it on board, and they don't just take it on board, but they make it more, and then they have ideas about it. And then that little thing that you just helped them with is now a bigger thing. And then they're talking to their colleagues, and then it just grows. And I think if you can feed energy and motivation and give them insight, the people that want that will take it.
You're a big Mel Robbins fan, aren't you?
Oh,
Are there any talks that you particularly like?
Well, I mean, I listen to her podcasts quite frequently, but the thing that, oh my God, if I'd have known this years ago, I think this would have significantly changed my life. She says this thing about let them. And it is so simple, but it's so true. And, I now apply that to friendship groups, business, work.
What does let them mean?
Let them means if there's somebody around you and they want to do something that's sort of very different to what you would do, or something that you don't enjoy or you don't think it's right, rather than trying to change them, just let them do it. And don't let that influence your way of being. So you look at that, you see what they do, and then you go, okay, I now know this about you. I'm not going to try and change you. I'm not going to try and get you to be or do the thing that I believe or think you should be doing. I'm going to decide whether that's appropriate for me, my friendships, my life, my career, and I'm just going to do what's right for me. And I think that would have, if I'd have listened or known about that, years ago, I think that would have saved a lot of angst.
Why do you think that phrase has resonated with you so much?
Because it's just changed my mindset. I would always, and this again is a product of me being the daughter and granddaughter of very, very driven women that had to work really hard to get where they were. And I was always told, you can make things happen. You can change things. And so I was brought up with that. And you spend so much time and energy trying to do this, and it's exhausting. Whereas if you just learn to accept people for who they are and what they are and what they want to do, and not try and force it, I think it just takes a lot of pressure off.
So it's slightly contradictory to how your mother and grandmother would have looked at it.
Completely different. I think they could have, I have no idea, but, they may have seen it as an abdication of responsibility or whatever, but I do think it enables you to have more peace, because there's things you can't change. There's things in your friends that are very different, and you just you have to accept. Well, you don't have to. You can choose not to, and it's very difficult. But if you do accept people for who they are and what they are, I think life is far more calm, for me anyway.
Just wanted to touch on ADHD and it playing a big role in your life. How has understanding it helped your career and you managing your workload and burnout?
Yeah, so I got diagnosed with it, God, only about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. So it's really recent, and it was post-COVID. And I think a lot of people have been diagnosed with it post-COVID because a lot of people's natural coping strategies that they didn't even know they had were gone. And that was definitely the case with me. And it was during COVID, my then partner said to me, have you ever thought you might have ADHD? Because she was around me 24/7, which has never been apparent. I was always working or here, there and everywhere. And all of a sudden I was in the house all the time.
Together, yeah.
And she just saw how my brain worked and how I am. And I just went, don't be ridiculous. Of course I haven't. And then I started reading about it and then going, oh my God, this is my life story. And sort of behaviours and way of being, just everything just resonated with me. But I was still in denial. And people have always said to me that my brain works in a different way and I behave differently and I don't understand normal life. And I do agree with all of that, but I never realised why. And I just thought, oh, you're exaggerating. Of course I'm completely the same as everybody else. My brain works the same as everybody else. And then the more and more I read, and of course I did an ADHD deep dive and became obsessed by this. So I think I've listened to everything and watched everything and read everything that you could possibly do. And I was just like, oh my God, yes, this all makes sense. So I went and I started the diagnosis path on the NHS. And then halfway through, I got a letter saying it's going to be another 2 years before you... So I got diagnosed part of the way through, and then I had to go through a second stage before they can issue medication. And they said it was going to be another 18 months to 2 years. So then I just thought, sod this, I'll go privately. And I did. And of course it was textbook case. And then I did take medication. And the difference is extraordinary, because all of that dopamine that I've spent my life searching for and creating situations to create dopamine subconsciously that I had no idea I was doing, that need for dopamine just stops. Literally just stops.
And how does that affect you?
You just feel calm because your brain isn't going crazy trying to find dopamine. So, I mean, attention deficit is the wrong thing. It's not that. It's the opposite. If something grabs your attention, you can't think about anything else. So it's hyperfocus because that thing is giving you dopamine. And, when I was young, it was sport, dangerous scenarios, putting yourself in, in a position where you could just fall off a mountain. Always dangerous, risky situations. Going in, wanting to go in the army. I was attracted to the possibility of dangerous, risky situations. So I still do dangerous, risky things, but in a calmer way.
Great, love it. Can you talk to us a little bit about when you started your business?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly exciting. We were young. We were sort of new kids on the block. We had all this vision, this energy. And there was everything before us. We had great ideas. We were in Shoreditch when Shoreditch wasn't Shoreditch. People didn't know where it was. We were one of the first people to have an office in the Tea Building. Our ideas were just very different to everything else in the industry. And it was just the excitement of it all, and just to be able to do things differently. And because, I mean, I was only, 33, 34, we thought differently and we were different. And so the industry at the time was very predominantly white, middle-aged men. How much has it changed? I don't know. But it was more so. And we were these young, dynamic, interested people that saw an industry. We were in an industry and we saw it and we thought, we don't like this part of the industry. We don't like the way that's done. And we were both very, very creative in terms of the way that we thought. And so it just came from a place of us just wanting to do it in a way that made us feel happy. And so we did. And with that, we connected very much with the young architects. So our business was very much A&D focused, which is notoriously one of the most difficult parts of the industry to penetrate.
Yeah.
But because of the way that we thought we were, we got traction. And we created a brand, and it had a very good brand. And we sort of, it sounds really cliched, but everything that Shoreditch became well known for before it got poncy, we were those things. And we were, it was genuine. It was real. And I think that's what the design community could see and feel. That we were like-minded. All of a sudden, here was a furniture dealership that was like-minded, that was creative, that was interested in the creative process, that actually was genuinely interested in furniture and not about the money. I mean, we were probably one of the poorest people ever to own a furniture dealership, but we weren't motivated by money. We were motivated by the creativity and what we could produce. And we did interesting things. So when we had the tea building, so bear in mind, this is literally when it first opened. And to give you an idea of where it was, we were in the tea building, we were paying £12.50 a square foot in the tea building. Amazing. So that shows where we were. So it was cutting edge. And we had this launch party. And this was at the time when, furniture dealers or manufacturers you'd have a glass of nasty warm white wine and men would be standing around in the suits and the ties. And it was tedious beyond anything. So we had this party where we had a person in the hallway in a giant flower pot welcoming people like a sort of, I don't know, something out of a circus as they arrived. And then they will arrive. And we curated a whole art space. And this is bonkers. So, and this was to attract the A&D. So we got them coming to this party and we curated all of these different artists on the wall. We had 5 original Bankses on the wall there because my then business partner actually went to school with him. So he never told me who he was. And so we had all of these 5 Bankses on the wall. We had all of these other really cool street artists. We got one street artist in to just draw all over the wall. Mm. And then we had all of these installation art pieces, these giant sort of champagne glasses with men and women dancing in them.
Amazing.
And then for music, we had a beatboxer. I mean, this is 2004, that I'd spotted on Brick Lane and we'd called in, and this was our launch party. Well, it was very different to everybody else.
Yeah.
And everybody loved it. And that sort of launched us. And then, I mean, the thing that Dom and I were very good at was marketing. And we just saw how everybody was responding to this. Mm. And we just followed on with it. And it was again, this dopamine thing, the excitement and the energy, and people could feel it.
And you stood out within the industry because you were a bit different.
We were so different. I mean, firstly, at the time, the only other woman in the industry really was Mary Wiggin. So that was the first thing. And then we just did it differently. I can remember there was, I don't know whether it was the FX Awards or something like that. We went and Don wore flip-flops. And people were like, you can't wear flip-flops. Of course you can wear flip-flops. Now everybody's wearing flip-flops. We did it differently all those years ago.
Yeah.
Because we just felt, and it wasn't, we were trying to be different. We just were.
Were you conscious at the time of being a woman in a bit of a male-dominated industry? Did it resonate with you?
I mean, I was very aware of it, but I'd had the perfect upbringing to be in that because I went to a boys' boarding school for a number of years. I was a day girl, but there was only 45 girls there when I was there. And there was,
in the whole school?
Yeah, and there was like 500 boys. It had just gone co-educational. So I was surrounded by boys. And this was, that was the 80s, so boys were more brutal then. Well, you could argue we didn't have social media, but they were quite brutal. Mm. And so I got used to that. And I was the only girl playing on the school teams often. So there'd be me and 10 boys. And I'd play against boys' schools. And I'd get there and they'd be like, well, there's nowhere for you to change. Because it was unheard of. So that being a woman in a man's world didn't faze me. And I was outspoken about it. Mm. And it didn't faze me because I was just like, I don't care. But I think that, and I also think that men could see that. And also I was impervious to their charms. So that helped. Yeah, it was a very, very interesting time, but it never, ever at one point, me being a woman, did that impact me negatively or think I can't do this or I'm not going to do this or I'm not going to try it. Never. And again, I think that was from my mum and my grandmother because they both lived their lives in a very progressive and forward-thinking way. My mum was very much a feminist and very outspoken, and as was my grandmother. Mm. So I was very much brought up with that, but wasn't even aware that it was a thing. It's just how we all were. So it's never been an issue. I find it very annoying that it's there. Mm. But I don't ever walk into a room that's full of men and feel intimidated.
So, Amanda, as you know, this podcast is called Places She Shapes. So I've got some shaping moments questions to ask you. The first one is, looking back, is there a place, a room, a building or a city where you found your voice or realised your potential as a leader, even if you didn't recognise it at the time?
I think it's now. I've had this thing all throughout my life where people have said to me, and it sounds very arrogant, but it's not coming from that place. You are a leader. And I've always had this thing in me, but I've always been really reluctant because I've never liked the idea of leading. I've never liked the idea of the spotlight. I've always, when I had my business with my business partner, he was the one that always spoke at our parties and events because I hated it. I hated it. And so I've been a reluctant leader. At school I was the captain of every single sports team there was. But it's never been something I've aimed to do. It's something that has been presented because of something that I have. And where I am right now, it's almost like my whole career is just coming to this point where it's like, finally, I feel happy to be in that position. And it's weird how it's happened. It's really strange. And maybe it's because I'm not seeing it or positioning it as being a leader, but I'm seeing it and positioning it as helping others to do what they can. And maybe that's why now I can kind of accept it and go with it, because it's not leading, it's helping. And I think that's how it has to be for me. It's sort of nurturing and bringing people along with you, but where people want to go.
So it's the word leader rather than the action. It's the title.
I think, that's what it is. And I've never thought about that before this very moment, but I think that possibly is, because in my mind, the connotations of leader is not the type of person that I want to be. So I think you may be right, but it feels good now.
Yeah.
And it feels like I can take people on a journey and see where we need to go and help them get there.
Yeah.
And then walk off into the sunset. Up a mountain in a tent.
So I've got a feeling I might know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. When you were, let's say 6 for this conversation, and you had to have a job title, what would your job title have been when you were 6? And how does it connect to the woman that you are today?
Well, it probably would have been Brigadier Salt. Notice I work for Brigadier. Having said I've never wanted to be a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was what I was thinking about. But conversely, at the same time, I did have it in my head that I could do something in art. And at that particular time, I was quite interested in fashion, weirdly, because that kind of went as well. So it was very much army or creativity. And so I've sort of bizarrely got to this position, which I am genuinely very happy with.
Yeah.
I feel at peace.
So those two veins have almost come in together to bring you to a really
Weirdly.
happy place that you're really enjoying.
Yeah, I've got the creativity, I've got the inadvertent leadership, and sort of both aspects of being satisfied. Strange.
Amazing. Amanda, thank you so much for joining me. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
let's take it from the top.